There is a kind of love that remains unwavering across millennia. There is a kind of crisis lurking around every corner. As the 𝐊𝐢𝐬 and Immerse savors her sweet love with North, she is unaware that she has long been the target of dark forces. After going through countless hardships and gradually uncovering the mystery surrounding her, she finds that her soul is closely linked to a powerful deity. Will this deity be her savior or push her into deeper darkness? And will North be her ultimate support? Now, let's embark on this fantasy journey filled with intertwined love and hatred. Chapter 34. I watched with a small pout as Eric turned to climb off the large bed, the bare muscles of his back rippling tantalizingly across my vision. He had only been back for a couple of hours, but was already forcing both of us awake. Not that I minded observing his half-clothed form move around the room. The thought made me blush furiously, and I curled my fingers into the blanket still draped around my waist, my shyness threatening to overwhelm me. He wore only black cotton shorts to sleep, and I could tell he did it for my benefit alone. If watching him continuously toss, turn, and throw the blankets on and off all night was any indication, my gaze followed him in awe, mesmerized by how his skin tightened and pulled over various muscles with every movement. It should be a sin to be that physically perfect. You look like him, I blurted out, immediately regretting the words as soon as they passed my lips. My cheeks burned a bright, dangerous red as he turned to me with one dark eyebrow raised, his handsome features curious. Like who? I kept my eyes focused on anything but his sculpted form. I gulped. My palms sweating nervously as the ruby warmed against my chest. Would it be strange to admit he looked almost exactly like the other man I had been dreaming of? The one my heart seemed to beat nearly as ecstatically for as it did for Eric. I sat up nervously, running a shaky hand through my long, dark hair, my cheeks hot with embarrassment. I caught a glimpse of his lips pulling into a small smile, his blue eyes flashing against the pale light of dawn. 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐬, he chuckled, and I glanced over at him long enough to see the light slowly fade from those captivating blue eyes. He is, technically, a part of me. I suppose it would be natural for us to look alike. That made sense. Of course it would. But I was surprised at the calm, almost bored manner he seemed to take on the subject. I am curious, though. He started softly, those strong, warm hands of his pulling a plain, black shirt over his handsome head. How you know what he looks like? The light in his eyes returned, but it was more mischievous than anything. Are you remembering a past life? My 𝐸𝐸 or 𝐸𝐸? Or, maybe, receiving interesting little visions. I bit my lip and glanced away as that large body of his leaned causally against the wall beside the bed, his bright gaze staring unwarringly down at me. I don't really know. Which was to lie. Just because I was dreaming of the god didn't make the visions real. They could possibly not look anything alike, and I was just portraying Eric as him for my heart's benefit. His voice was low, but his tone came out as a mocking thoughtfulness, one that didn't settle easily in my stomach. I glared at him as he leaned off the wall and walked over to the large wardrobe on the other side of the room. 𝐴𝐸𝐻𝐻, Delos, and I will be busy searching the mountain today. 𝐿𝐻 and the others will be around if you need them. Or me. I watched with a small frown as he grabbed those signature black pants from the drawer and turned towards the bath chambers. North, I called softly as he opened the door and stepped in. He paused and turned back to look at me with those bright blues. Why do I always feel like you know more than what you want me to believe you do? His gaze darkened at my words, but his lips pulled into a small, sad smile as he turned back towards the bathroom. Have a good day, my little Immerse. And there you are. I had been looking all over for you. I smiled at the large general walking casually down the grand staircase, his hands resting deep in his pants pockets. He paused halfway down a step, his strong shoulders going rigid as I hurried after him. I had just started down the steps when I heard him let out a long, drawn-out sigh, before starting down the stairs once again. Did Finn not tell you I was looking for you? I asked Turf casually when I finally caught up with him, but he didn't even spare me a glance. 𝐊𝐢𝐳 growled beside. Those golden eyes pointed forwards as his tensed frame stayed angled away from mine. I stared up at him with a frown, but he refused to acknowledge it as he continued stomping down the stairs. Have you been busy then? No. There was a harsh snap in his tone, one that only made my frown turn into a small pout as I lifted my dress away from my feet. He couldn't possibly still be upset about me going to the cave. That was days ago, and even Eric had forgiven me. Are you mad at me, ah? I shrieked when the dress I hadn't pulled up enough snagged beneath my foot, and I started to fall face first down the few stairs that were left. Tariff's hand shot out of nowhere and wrapped tightly around my upper arm before yanking me back to a standing position beside him. His golden eyes were blazing in fury. Fucking damn it. Immerse. He snapped and ripped his hand from my arm to run it viciously through his hair. Can you not do anything without having to be fucking saved all the time? I blinked up at him with wide, startled eyes as he turned from me and stomped brutishly down the rest of the steps. I watched as his large, angry form stalked away the second he hit the main floor. Okay then. I had no idea what I did to prompt such anger from him this time, and despite the tight feeling at the back of my throat, I tried to push the little encounter to the back of my mind. The last thing I needed was to be worrying about his temper when I was too busy dealing with North and dangerous. I gripped onto the handrail beside me for some form of balance, before lowering gently to the step where my ankle was now throbbing. I let a pout breach my lips, just because I could, and lifted the skirts of my dress high enough to rub a soothing hand around the dull ache. Well, isn't that just perfect? My lady. My eyes snapped up to the large, still brooding male in front of me, although his golden eyes had softened some. Come back to yell at me some more. Have you? I grumbled before dropping my gaze back down to my ankle. I had twisted it just barely, and could already feel the pain start to fade away. I heard him let out another long sigh, before crouching down in front of me, his knees resting a few steps below mine. I am sorry, Lady Immerse. His voice was just as rumbly as mine, but I knew the apology in his eyes was genuine enough. I do not mean to take out my grievances against you, and yet I always do. My eyes flickered up and locked with his, although that dark, saddened look in his golden gaze did not ease the nerves in my stomach. That was the most genuine and remorseful I had ever seen him. What grievances? I asked softly as his hands pushed mine out of the way to feel the small bruise of my ankle himself. They do not matter. He grumbled more to himself than me, as his eyes scanned the longer hurting bone. You only twisted it a little. It should be fine in an hour or so. I figured. Thank you. I sighed as he stood to his feet once again, his hand reaching down to help me to my own. I gave him a small smile and let him ease me to my feet. It was quiet between us for a few moments after that, and he held on to my arm to help me down the rest of the stairs. No matter how many times I reassured him I was fine. I am not mad at you. He finally spoke again when my feet hit the main floor and he let go of my arm. I have a hard time believing that. He rolled his eyes before pocketing his hands once again. I grow angered at your decisions, and at your mannerisms. He paused, cast a thoughtful look down the hall, then nodded his head. And at your blatant disregard for anything you're told. Gee, that sure doesn't sound like you're mad at me at all. But I have a hard time being mad at you specifically. The frustration his previous comments brought seemed to fade away as those eyes softened again. Is there a reason you wanted to see me? He asked casually, his tone trying a little too hard to seem nonchalant. Yes, I was hoping we could talk for a while. I spoke softly as I let my hands ease out the wrinkles on the front of my dress. About what? I shrugged at his raised eyebrow, and let my gaze flicker around the main, grand foyer. I had no idea how I was going to approach the whole healing me topic, or if I even wanted to. And I definitely knew asking about his lost mate was probably a no-go, but I couldn't help the sharp curiosity strumming through me. About anything, really. I rather miss your company, which was a total lie. I loved spending time with 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐬, and even though Tariff and I had our rough spots, I did enjoy some of the time we had once spent together. He snorted, and I could practically feel his want to roll his eyes again as he turned towards the hall opposite the stairs. I followed slowly after him, now that I find hard to believe. It's true. I grumbled at his large back as he kept just a few feet in front of me. He shot me a look over his shoulder before slowing down. Why do I have the feeling you want something? I shrugged again, just because I wasn't sure how to answer that. I did want something. Answers, even if it was only out of curiosity. He shook his head and grumbled something under his breath before running his large hand through his hair. All right, let's take a walk. I 𝐊𝐤𝐳 my elated smile as I fell into step beside him, and the tension in his shoulders slowly eased. We walked in silence for a while, not with a set destination, that I knew of at least. 𝐿𝐻 seemed to be off in his own little world, and it was hard to get lost in my own. Eric had gone off to search for the missing seer hours ago, and I couldn't help but worry for him. He had 𝐿𝐻𝐸 on and the others. But what if something happened and I was there with the gold power to save him? If he got hurt and then didn't bring him back in time? I shuddered. North told me about how you saved my life in the lower kingdom. I finally broke the silence between us. Even if it was in the easiest way possible. I just had to get out of the dark thoughts my mind had fallen into. His large body tensed beside me once again. Did he know? His voice came out as a disgruntled growl as his hand reached up to run through his disheveled hair once again. Nervous habit. I noted. His bright eyes refused to glance over at mine, and his brow furrowed in what looked like frustration. Yes, and I know Ivy thanked you before, but I never realized the extent of the matter. Stop. Just stop. His voice wasn't hard, nor angry like I was used to, but rather tired. The situation was handled, and I would rather just leave it at that. You saved my life. 𝐿𝐻. I spoke low, soft even, as I reached between us to lay a gentle hand on his upper arm. He stepped away from me. I bit you. That is a betrayal of the highest regard. I know, but that doesn't change the fact that it saved my life. And for that, I will be eternally grateful. He let out a displeased growl and paused just beside a large bay window etched into the castle's stone wall, his golden stare glancing down at the world hidden in the darkness of the night. North should have never forgiven me, he admitted softly a moment later, his voice nearly as distant as his gaze. Don't say that, I murmured as I leaned against the stone wall behind the window and glanced down at the dimly lit town shining below us. It is true. He should have thrown me from the council, from the kingdom. He should have killed me. There was a dark snarl to his voice, and a heavy set in his gaze. It made my stomach flip painfully. I would have never forgiven him, which was 100% true. I knew how serious they took their customs and traditions, knew how important mates were. But if Eric had actually killed him over it, I would have never given him a chance. I know, he said on a haggard sigh before turning away from the window and leaning heavily against the stone wall, which I'm sure is part of the reason why he did not. I didn't respond to that disgruntled remark, and copied his stance on the other side of the window. For all his rough person as, I fear the king cares too much for you and the others to ever kill you. He made a sound close to a snort and scoffed before crossing his thick arms over his chest. What you must understand, Lady Mri, he started low, his voice gruff as his eyes flashed over to mine, is that North will do anything when it comes to you. Will do anything for you. The heat that I was becoming way too familiar with stained my cheeks as I forced my gaze from his. It was hard believing that North held such high feelings for me, no matter how many times he told me so. Even if he has to kill one of us. The delighted flutter in my stomach died as his voice turned somber once again. North would never kill one of the generals because of me. He 𝐿𝐻𝐸𝐿. They meant too much to him, and he to them. Yes, well, which, yes. I cleared my throat to get rid of the dark tension that suddenly filled the hall, and rolled my shoulders as he glanced over at me. I understand the risk you took in healing me. So again, thank you. His sudden laugh threw me off guard, and my eyes snapped to his on their own accord. You need to stop thanking me. I would have saved you regardless of the risk. Yes, because North wouldn't have handled my death well. Because, besides how much you annoy me, I am rather fond of you. I jumped at his words, and my eyes grew wide as I watched him run his hand down his hard face. I knew 𝐻𝐤𝐻𝐬 always said that the grumpy general had a soft spot for me, but I never believed it before. I'm still not sure if I believed it. I didn't save you because the king demanded it. I did it because I didn't want you to die. His jaw was shut tight, and his golden eyes seemed to glow in the dim light of the hall. His words were soft enough, but his face looked tense and poised for an argument. I bit my lip and glanced away. So he actually did have a soft heart. Who would have thought? Perhaps that is another reason why he did not punish me. He murmured thoughtfully before leaning back against the wall once again. I didn't know what to say after that, so I stayed silent and wrung my hands together. If I talked, I feared it would disrupt the words he kept speaking. I never expected him to share so much, and I doubted after this conversation he ever would again. How did you become a general? I asked softly a moment later, the tension between us slowly fading away. I caught his shrug out of the corner of my eye. I did not see any meaning in life. Until North. He gave me a purpose. His tone had turned hard, but when I glanced over at him, his eyes looked so heartbreaking sad that it tore holes into my chest. Was that after your mate passed? His eyes snapped to mine so fast it made my head spin. But the sudden curious look clouding them made me want to ease carefully away. How do you know about her? He snarled, those golden eyes flashing black as a growl started deep in his chest. I never feared North when he got like that, but Turf was a whole other matter. No matter how much he cared about me, he did not have the mate obligation keeping him from tearing out my throat. I gulped and sidestepped a little along the wall as he pushed away from it. One of the others might have mentioned something about it. The growl that rose from his lips was frightening, and his eyes were now pitch black as his large shoulders started to shake. 𝐻𝐤𝐻𝐬. That mutt needs to learn to keep his fucking mouth shut. I watched with wide and rather scared eyes as he turned towards the window, his shaking hands clenching craters into its sill. Mental note for next time. His mate was not a topic for discussion. The ruby suddenly pulsed against my chest, and heat shot straight through me from its heart as the windowsill practically crumbled beneath his. I hurriedly pulled the stone through the top of my dress so the heat would not burn my skin. Immerse. I gasped at the voice that suddenly shot through my mind. That dark, amused tumble of the man who I had been dreaming about for more than a week. Except, he wasn't amused now. My fingers clutched around the stone in a grip as tight as a vice, and I had to close my eyes against the light of the hall as my head began to throb. Immerse. I heard Turf ask what seemed like 1,000 leagues away, but I was too focused on the pain stinging through my mind to respond, or wonder if he was still as furious as a moment ago. My lady, my little star, the voice spoke again, softer this time, before images started flying across my mind's eyes. Images of 1,000 loving smiles and gentle whispers. Images that were almost like a soft caress to my heart, but they did nothing to ease the pain in my head. Immerse. The minute that familiar voice I loved so much reached my ears, the images stopped, and 𝐴𝐸𝐿 voice fell away like the dreams he haunted. Strong hands were gripping tightly onto my upper arm, holding me steady as I swayed like a numb bag of air. Little one, North murmured softly, his arms wrapping securely around my back as I fell against his hard chest. My head still throbbed, and the stone was still hot as glowing embers in my hand, but I cowled and let it go. I hadn't realized there were tears streaming down my cheeks until Eric used one hand to wipe them gently from my face. I clung desperately to him, and prayed the pain away as my fingers wrapped impossibly tight around the ruby. It's all right. He practically cooed as those soft lips rubbed gently over my forehead. He reached up to wrap his hand around mine and the stone. Perhaps you should take this off for a while, he offered softly, his strong fingers easily prying mine away. I whimpered and shook my head viciously against his chest. And no, it's mine. It stays with me. My head continued to throb, the pain like a steel hammer smashing against my skull. 𝐻𝐸 gave the stone to me, told me to keep it close to my heart, to never take it off. His heart, my stone, whom I am sure he will understand, just for a little while. It is hurting you, my love. But Eric, I practically sobbed as his fingers continued to try and pry the ruby from my hand. I was too upset to sense the tension strumming between the king and his general. Just for a little while. I promise I'll give it back. He soothed softly into my ear, his voice warm and gentle as my fingers finally released their death grip around the stone. Its heat and power finally dimming. What did she just call you? I heard 𝐻𝐸 ask somewhere at the back of my mind, but I was too wrapped up in my own head to really pay attention. North ignored him also. Some part of me, at the back of my head, knew what I did next was inappropriate on a number of levels, but that didn't stop me from wrapping both of my arms tightly around his bare waist and holding onto his strong body for dear life. But tears were no longer falling, but my breathing was still rather erratic as he put the ruby in his shorts pocket and wrapped both of his arms tightly around my back. "Shit's okay," he murmured softly as I clung to him, my arms shaking and my eyes throbbing in my skull. "It will pass. Don't worry." I pressed my face against his skin and breathed in the scent of the woods and snow that still clung to him. It helped ease the convulsions strumming through my body. "Why don't we go lie down for a while?" he whispered gently into my ear, his large hand running soothingly down my back as I rubbed my face against him. I nodded, and didn't bother objecting as he bent down and picked me right off the ground. I wrapped my arms tightly around his neck, and buried my face into his strong shoulder as he began walking down the hall, my head still throbbing in pain. "North," 𝐻𝐸 growled behind us, his voice loud as it echoed around the empty hall. "We will talk later." There was a hard bite in Eric's tone, one I tried to ignore as his arms tightened around me. "What's wrong?" I mumbled into his shoulder as he started towards the staircase, his hold gentle even as tension now thummed through him. "Nothing I cannot handle." Chapter 35. He held the ruby out to me. "It's dark, deep red glinting in the dim light as I glanced up at it." He raised one dark, perfect eyebrow. "Would you like it back?" I paused and watched the stone a moment before nodding. It was warm as I wrapped my fingers around the hard planes of its surface. "How are you feeling?" Eric asked softly after I pulled the cord back over my head and tucked the stone beneath my nightgun. Its warmth seeped slowly along my skin, but it did not pulse like usual. "Better. I'm sorry for acting so crazy yesterday," I mumbled as an embarrassed flush rose to my cheeks. He gave me a soft smile as his fingers dropped back to my hair. "Don't be. You can't help it." I still frowned, even as those blue eyes gazed warmly down at me, and his strong fingers stroked my hair. "Did you find him?" I asked instead of lingering on my mental breakdown from the day before. The headache had slowly disappeared overnight, but that didn't stop the odd shaking my whole body had undertaken. Eric's small smile pulled into a frown as his fingers left my hair to stroke gently along my cheek. "No, but we picked up on his trail. It shouldn't be long now." Despite the reassurance in his tone, and the confidence shining in his eyes, unease still settled heavily in my stomach. Liberius was somewhere roaming free on the mountain, and no doubt looking for some way to harness 𝐻𝐸𝐻𝐸's power, if he could even find him. "When do you go out again?" I asked quietly as his fingers dropped to my jaw. His small smile turned into a concerned frown as he laid heavily beside me, his blue eyes soft. "After you are better." I let out a small sigh and tried not to shake my head as his hand left my jaw to readjust the blankets at my waist. I loved all the attention he was giving me. I truly was, but he was worse than a mother hen. Not that I had much experience with those. I promised him not sick. It was just a ridiculous headache, one I could feel. The bond only allows strong emotions and strenuous pain to pass from one mate to another. That was no ordinary headache. Immerse. My lips stuck down in a small pout. One I tried to hide as his eyes practically stared holes into the side of my head. "Do not be mad at 𝐻𝐸. I mumbled instead of lingering on my little episode. The less he knew how much of a head case I was, the better. This was his fault. After North had laid me down securely in the bed the night before, he had ranted and raved about Terry's carelessness, as if my psychotic breakdown had been his fault. My head had still been in too much pain for me to say otherwise at the time. I watched those full, soft lips of his pull it into a frown, and his eyes dark and a shade. He knows better than to act in such a way around you. I let out a long sigh before reaching up to run my hand through my hair that was resting against the pillow. I asked him a stupid question that was none of my business, and he reacted as he should have. That is no excuse for his lack of control. He got mad. North. That does not mean he lost control. He didn't do anything to me. He scared you. True. But he didn't do anything violent or aggressive besides digging holes into the stone sill of the window. But he didn't hurt me. Whatever happened with my stone head? I mumbled, and reached obsessively for the ruby hidden beneath my clothes, hearing 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐪 voice inside my head, as if he were there talking directly to me, was nerve-wracking. It had felt as if he were there, inside my head, sifting through my thoughts and feelings. My mind was not made to be shared by two people, and my head wanted to explode because of it. Eric didn't speak for a moment, and I could practically feel the tension strumming through him. Then he finally let out a long, drawn-out sigh, and ran a heavy hand through his dark hair. All right. I will allow this indiscretion to pass. I didn't bother to argue with him about the indiscretion part. It wasn't worth it. As long as he was going to be upset at the general for something he did not do, then I would drop the matter. Have you made a decision about Mae yet? I hadn't seen much of her since we arrived back from the cave, but I knew she was doing all right. One of the generals always kept an eye on her, even rotated shifts to do so. I liked to pretend that it was to keep her safe, but I knew it was only because North did not trust her. We exchanged a few messages through the servants, and she seemed content enough. Even mentioned how large and elegant her rooms were. She may stay as long as she does not present further problems. And thank you, I murmured softly, my eyelids drooping as I turned on my side. It was still early. The sun had just barely started to rise, and I had been awake nearly all night nursing that ridiculous headache. Erica's dark chuckle filled the room, and wrapped around me like a warm, soft blanket. Go back to sleep. Dear one, I will see you for final meal. His voice was a soft whisper in my ear, and even though it brought butterflies to my stomach, I wanted to frown. You are leaving? I asked around a quiet yawn, my eyes drooping closed as the stone warmed against my chest. Yes. If you believe you are well enough, I must go back down the mountain. The sooner we find 𝐊𝐿𝐷, the sooner we can be rid of him. I curled my fingers in the top of the thick blankets and pulled them to my chin to hide my pout. I didn't want him to leave so soon, even if I was close to falling asleep. I enjoyed his company too much. His presence. I never wanted him to leave. He laughed softly again before leaning over and pressing those soft lips to my forehead. My cheeks heated at the action. I will be back before long. My 𝐸MRIE. You just sleep away all your little worries. I wanted to scoff and roll my eyes as he started climbing out of the large four-poster bed, when he had to decipher all the mayhem rummaging inside his head. Then he could talk about little worries. I decided to go for a walk the next time I woke. The sun was high in the sky, and Eric had been gone for hours. My dreams had been silent for once, with no dark-haired, red-eyed gods chuckling in amusement every 10 seconds. It was nice waking up without my heart tearing in 1,000 different ways. Like always, there were few servants traveling the many halls and passageways of the 𝐿𝐷 castle, and even fewer generals. I ate lunch with Finn and 𝐿𝐷, had a very brief conversation with 𝐊𝐷, then set out to tour the halls I had traveled so many times before. But there was always something new to find. Maybe I could go visit Mae for a while. 𝐊𝐷 mentioned that Turf and Delos had gone with North to search the mountain, which left 𝐿𝐷 on underling watch duty. I smiled and hopped down the grand staircase eagerly. I missed the large general and his amusing antics. Spending my day with 𝐿𝐸 seemed like a good idea. My lady. My head whipped around at the sound of his voice. At the voice I had prayed to never hear again. My heart hammered in my chest as the pair of yellow eyes gleamed over at me. It was obvious he had been scrounging in the woods for weeks. His hair was disheveled, his skin an ugly yellow that nearly matched that of his wide, slightly crazed eyes. His long, dramatic dress robes were torn and ripped in long jagged gashes, and even singed in some places. His skin had even thinned and sunken into his bones, as if he hadn't eaten as long as 𝐿𝐸d been missing. If I was so terrified of him, and of the look in his pale, yellow eyes, I would have felt sorry for him. He was supposed to be gone, missing down the mountain somewhere. Eric had been so sure he wasn't in the kingdom anymore. And yet, here he was, smiling creepily up at me from the bottom of the staircase. "What are you doing here?" I tried to keep my voice even as he took a step up the stairs, one I matched with a step of my own. I didn't like that eager, insane look in his eyes, or the way his fingers tapped incessantly against the marble railing of the staircase. Despite his misshapen appearance, his face was alight in excitement, his eyes blazing a bright, manic yellow. "The time has come, dear Immerse. It is time you helped me find 𝐿𝐸d." I was shaking my head before he even finished speaking, my stomach twisting painfully as he took another step towards me. "No, I told you once before. I will not help you in your delusions. Before it was simply because I did not believe I could be some fallen star God was desperately searching for. Now it was because this man was 100% insane. And I knew 𝐿𝐸d existed, knew his power was real. Actually, you will," I shrieked when he suddenly flashed to my side, his decrepit manner not slowing down his quick, snake-like movements one bit. That excitement in his gaze caused those yellow eyes to shine like the orange and yellow flames of the torches hanging high above us. I tried to jump away from him, my hand raising to smack the man silly if he drew any closer. But his own flew through the air and gripped tightly onto my arm before I could. I gasped at the bruising grip, his teeth gleaming down at me wickedly, and curled my other hand into a fist. For looking so feeble and weak, he sure was strong. "What are you? Let go me right now. 𝐿𝐸d," I shouted up the empty staircase. I hadn't seen the general in an hour, but he had to be wandering the castle somewhere. Someone should have heard my shriek. Now, my lady, keep quiet please. There are important matters we must attend to." His voice was sickly sweet in my ear, and his fingers curled as sharp as talons into my arm as he started dragging me down the stairs. My breathing quickened into panicked gasps, and my heart felt as if it would beat its way out of my chest. I could feel my cheeks growing hot in anger and fear, but no matter how hard I tried to tug my arm out of the vile creature's grasp, or hit him viciously in his own, his hold did not budge. Even when I smacked him hard across the face, he hadn't seemed fazed at all. "I'm not going anywhere with you. Let me go. North," I screamed again, even though I knew he wasn't anywhere near. He wouldn't be back till the final meal, and the sun had just barely started to fall. But it didn't help when 𝐿𝐸d let out a chuckle with that sickly sweet, way too excited voice of his. "The king and those other dogs are currently detained. I made sure of it. They won't bother us one bit." The panic shooting through me only grew at his words, and at the way a wicked smile pulled on his lips. What scared me the most, though, was the stone resting casually against my chest. It was as cold as death, and held no pulsation simpering through it. That definitely was good. "He will realize what you are doing," I argued over my panted breathing as he continued to drag me down the large staircase. "Not a single other soul in sight. And he will kill you before you get the chance. I highly doubt that. 𝐿𝐸d's taking a rather long journey down the mountain as we speak. We have plenty of time." My breath caught in my throat, which didn't help the panic sitting in my lungs. That trail he had found the day before, the one he was so certain would lead to the traitor's capture, it was fake. Yes, all very fake. He nodded his head enthusiastically as we hit the main floor, then started dragging me down the hall, I thrashed and hit desperately at his thin figure, but that grip did not budge. I believe we should be where we need to be before he realizes it. Despite those little magic tricks of his. Where are you taking me? I demanded between my struggles as he pulled me down the side hall. Those fingers of his curling impossibly tight into my arm. Just a little way down the mountain. He announced cheerfully as he pulled me to a stop beside a serving door and pushed it open. I already have everything set up. You will see. Oh, it's going to be amazing. 𝐿𝐺𝐻 will tremble at our feet. No, he won't. I snapped as he yanked me through the small door and pushed me towards the tiny, old and wooden staircase hidden behind it. 𝐿𝐺𝐻 is too smart for you. I twisted around to sneer at him, my back towards the dark descent of the stairs. His teeth looked sharper in the darkness of the small room, and much more deadly. Down the stairs. My lady, was all he said before that grip forced me around again and pushed me towards the steps. I started down them grudgingly, that angry panic swelling in my chest. Where is everyone? I grumbled to myself as he followed closely behind me, his grip impossibly tight. Off to a more interesting area of the castle. Magic can do wonderful things. You will soon see that too. He sent everyone away. Even 𝐿𝐺𝐻𝐬. Good heavens. I needed North now more than ever. The small serving stairwell was dark, the only light coming from the one torch in the small room above us, and the one in an even smaller entryway below. Walk faster. We don't have all day. He snapped into my ear, that sickly sweet excitement in his voice easing a notch the closer we got to the bottom of the stairs. He pushed the arm he was gripping forward, causing me to stumble down a step or two. I groaned as my body crashed into the stone wall, my head knocking a little against it. Ouch. I muttered and reached up with my free hand to press against the small knot forming on the side of my head. He didn't lean up on pushing me down the stairs. There was no room at the bottom of the steps, only a small entryway and door that matched the one floor above us. There was a small, empty window at its top, sunlight shining through. 𝐿𝐺𝐻𝐬 didn't give me a chance to catch my breath before he pushed the door open and shoved me through. I had to blink as sunlight filled my vision, despite its dimming glow as it dropped behind the mountain. This was not good. I stood blinking down the steep slope of the mountain, 𝐿𝐺𝐻𝐬's grip still tight as death as he fumbled behind us with the doorknob, that disgusting voice of his mumbling incoherent words beneath his breath. I reached up with my free hand and pressed it against the stone hidden against my chest, the cold ruby that no longer seemed to thrive with life. It made me want to cry. Whenever it heated, North always seemed to be near. I wasn't sure if it was because he was my mate, or because of the part of his soul that was 𝐿𝐺𝐻𝐬's, but it comforted me nonetheless. The ruby was cold, and as silent as the gray clouds accumulating above us. My heart stuttered in my chest, and the panic sitting in my lungs grew as the monster tugged me away from the door. That malicious smile back on his raw, pale lips. Let us go conjure a god. Chapter 36. The further along the mountain the ridiculous man pulled me, the more my heart seemed to fall into my stomach. The castle had disappeared behind the trees a while ago, and I feared North would not be able to find us, no matter how he promised he always would. If he even knew I was missing. This is ridiculous. You have to let me go. I snapped for the 100th time as his vice, like grip continued to drag me through the dense forest. The sun was falling further and further behind the horizon of the mountain with each step we took, and the light from the moon glistening overhead offered little protection from the darkness of the trees. The snow, which I had once loved so deeply, sparked dangerously against the branches. I let out a shaky breath. Stop struggling. It won't do any good. 𝐿𝐺𝐻𝐬 growled with a sharp tug on my arm. A curse escaped my lips as the pull caused my feet to stumble over a fallen branch. We are not far now, he murmured hurriedly, those disgustingly yellow eyes glancing hurriedly around the trees. Are you not excited to see your love again, dear Immerse? He sneered, his fanged teeth flashing in the darkness as he glanced back at me. Sickness stirred in my stomach. Or are you content touring around with that lesser king? His words were a sharp slap to my face. one that left my mouth gaping open and my eyes wide in disbelief. I had never been talked to in such a way. Not that I could remember, at least. Boring around. My mind was already tearing apart trying to figure out my relationship with the king. But to describe it in such a way, the truth is always hard to swallow. My lady. Fuck you. Oh, some owns getting snarky. His eyes flashed in amusement and that sickening smile of his only grew. I like it. It stirs your power more. It won't take long to call to him now. I was too furious to say anything after that. The words just kept sticking in my throat. I honestly never want to wish ill on anyone, but I would have given anything to watch North end him just then. We had been walking for what felt like hours, with no sign of any wolf-borne, not even the border patrol. I feared what that meant. It wasn't much longer until he pulled me through a thick clump of trees, our feet stepping onto a large, rolling clearing. Thick high grass crumbled beneath us as he dragged me away from the forest. The castle nowhere in sight. I suddenly missed the cover of the trees. The quickly fading sun was hidden completely behind thick, black, storm clouds brewing steadily along the mountain. A cold, bitter wind blowing along with it. A terrified shiver ran down my spine, and the feeling didn't tease as a large, metal-like object, sitting directly in the middle of the clearing, entered my vision. My breath turned into panic pants deep within my chest. That could not be good. Bess, stop this right now. But the words were weak pleas as they stumbled past my lips. Too weak for anyone to hear over the rolling thunder of the brewing storm. Not that he would have let me go anyway. The closer he dragged me towards the odd machine, the darker the space around us grew. At first I thought it was just those ridiculous clouds blocking all hope of light, but then quick, slithering movements caught the corner of my gaze. I snapped my head to the side, my eyes wide in fear as dark shadows flew beside us. Dark shadows that slowly began to swim throughout the entire clearing. Hard, tarred, demonic red eyes glowing through the swarm. They looked nothing like the ruby red of the god I once loved. Still loved. I think. I didn't think it was possible for the panic in my chest to grow anymore. But my heart raced unbearably hard in my chest every time one of those shadows flashed beside us. What were those things? Don't mind them. 𝐊𝐢𝐬 said on a laugh and continued to pull us towards the metal contraption standing ferociously in front of us. It was rather short, just a few inches taller than me as it sat on a raised platform with thick, clunky metal's arms reaching out towards the trees. Leather straps that heavily wrapped around them. I gulped. How much did I want to that those straps were for me? They're just here to make sure we aren't interrupted. North. They were there to stop Eric if he somehow found us. Something I had wanted more than anything. Then those shadows moved again. Dark fog falling away into sharp talons and even sharper fangs. Fear shot down my spine. No, Eric 𝐊𝐢𝐬 didn't find me. I didn't want him to. I wanted him to stay so far away none of those demons would ever touch him. Besides, if 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐻's plan was successful and actually did some adding to us, he was a god. He could take care of himself. Those demons would only kill North. My life worth that. What is that? I demanded as his vicious grip finally pulled me to the front of the horrid metal thing. The smile he shot my way was sickening, and I tripped over my dress skirts as he started dragging me along the platform steps. Just a fun little machine that will help that shy power of yours come out and play. My eyes snapped to his, and my chest tightened as that very power seemed to curl inside. The ruby warmed against my chest. The gold power. That was what this was about. Then I wanted to slap my palm over my forehead and curse. Of course. This is all about that disastrous power. The essence of 𝐊𝐢𝐬 Star of Immerse. I knew that now. Knew it wasn't magic or power at all. But her soul, my soul. My soul. It was why it always desperately tried to reach Eric. Why it tried to leave my body to go to his. It wanted his soul. Wanted that part of him that was attached to the eternal being it so loved. I shouldn't have been able to control it as I had in the past. Because it was me. My very being. And the direct link 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐻 needed to 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐻. I hadn't realized he had successfully pulled me up the platform towards the machine until I was shoved against the cold, hard metal of its grasp. This thing, whatever it was, had the ability to drag out my soul, to use it against my will, and I had a sickening feeling it was going to be pleasant. I shoved against him again, pushed at his thin shoulders and weary arms as hard as I could. He was not human, nor shifter. There was no possible way. No one who appeared so feeble but had the strength of 10 men as he did was mortal. Let me go. I screamed against the howling wind of the storm, against the hissing shadows swirling below us, their bodies taking shapes of massive serpent, like creatures before fading again into a solid, red-eyed mass. I said, "Stop struggling." 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐩𝐿 hissed, his sharp, bony fingers digging into my arms as he shook my body so hard my head snapped back against the body of the machine. My vision went blurry, and white sparks danced behind my eyelids as I let out a long, pained groan. "I told you it wouldn't do you any good." He snapped as one of his thin arms pinned my back to the machine while the other started tying the straps around my waist. I groaned again when the little light in the shadow, crowded clearing slipped into my sight. "It shouldn't be too long before he feels your power." 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐻 started speaking as if we were having a normal, everyday conversation. His movements quick as he tightened the set of straps against my stomach and moved on to the ones at my arms. Heavens! I could feel it easily down the mountain when you so valiantly save that 𝐊𝐢𝐻𝐿. The problem is getting the moron to remember fully. Only way to make it work. He was rambling nonsensical lie to himself now, and I watched in silent daze as those inky, black, horrid shadows swirled around the platform like a putrid fog. My head is starting to throb. The ache where it hit the machine growing. "What are you talking about?" I mumbled as he wound those leather bindings around my left arm and tightened them until they bit like knives into my skin. "What do you think happens to gods who spend too long on the mortal plane?" He sneered as he moved on to my next arm. "They forget." The ache in my head was still strong, but his words were coming into clearer focus as my vision completely cleared. He wouldn't forget me. My voice was shaky as it passed my lips, my breath coming out as fog in the bitter air. The pain in my head only grew as snippets of a previous life flew past my mind's eyes. Images of warm smiles, memories of loving kisses and warm embraces. The stone warmed softly against my chest, but there was still no life streaming through it. Adrianus wouldn't have forgotten me. He loved me more than anything. I knew that, and I loved him. I remembered that. Remembered everything he had done for me, the battles he had fought for me, the life he had breathed into me. I broke the rules. Immerse. I breathed eternity into you without permission. I was never supposed to get involved with the stars. The decision of their rebirth is Axian's, not mine. I remembered. He could never forget me. We were always meant to be. We were forever. Eternal. He promised. Oh, indeed he would. And he did. But don't you worry that powerful little heart of yours, my dear. His voice was a mocking coo, one those dark shadows seemed to snicker along with. He 𝐾𝐤 had helped it. That's just what this realm does to the immortals. Makes them dumb, weak, perfectly capable of surrendering their power if pushed enough. And you're just the push I need. He will kill you. I snapped through the swell of past emotions and anger growing inside. But he only laughed, and the sound ricocheted through the clearing like breaking glass. Strong he may be, but I highly doubt the ignorant fool even remembers she is a god, stuck in that stupid wolf, whom he loved so much. Embedding. Can you not feel him in the mountain, my lady? Or have you grown as ignorant of him as he has of you, trapped in your own little infatuation of that pathetic excuse of a king? There was a bitter hatred in his voice now, that amusement gone as those yellow eyes flashed an earthly red. It made my stomach twist in fear, but that didn't squelch my anger. Is a great king, far better than you could ever be. He does everything for them. I wouldn't be surprised if he sacrificed himself for their benefit or sacrificed me. Whether that made him heartless or a glutton for punishment I was sure. But he always put his people first. That was not something a pathetic king would do. Well, I don't want to be a king. Now do I. The amusement in his voice was back, but that horrid look in his varying eyes was anything but humored. He tightened the straps against my arms until they cut thin slivers into the skin, a few drops of blood trickling down the leather bindings. I want my place back on the High Council, and I want that bastard 𝐿𝐤𝐳 to choke on his own son's blood. I had not made a decision yet. She was still under review. You broke the law, 𝐿𝐤𝐳. That is not something I can ignore. Even for my son. I love her. You are infatuated with her. There is a difference. The conversation slammed into my mind as 𝐿𝐤𝐳 stepped off the metal platform, his robes following easily behind him. I groaned as more images flashed behind my eyes. The last thing I needed right now was a fucking head show. I needed to get away from that freak. To make matters worse, the gold power was starting to rear its ugly head in my chest. My soul was slowly starting to break free. Not again. I grumbled under my breath as the familiar feeling of that warm, deadly magic flowed from my heart to my veins and slowly throughout the rest of my body. Even if I knew how to use it for more than healing, it would have only killed me in the process. What was a soul without a body anyway? Oh, yes, good. 𝐿𝐤𝐳 practically cheered below the platform, those dark shadows swirling slowly around his robes. His eyes flashed red in the darkness around us. We haven't even begun yet, and that power is already stirring. This is going to be easier than I thought. I tugged helplessly against the bindings. I wanted more than anything to be free of the situation. For North to come out of nowhere and save me like he always seemed to do, but another part of me feared that more than anything. Those dark, horrid shapes swirling throughout the entire clearing were more than just thick black clouds. They were demons. Creatures summoned from the depths of the underworld. No matter how powerful Eric and his generals were, they held no match against creatures of such evil. And 𝐿𝐤𝐳, even if he truly had forgotten me, forgotten himself, was still a powerful being. How fierce he became in battle. I had watched him conquer armies with nothing more than the power inside him. He could take care of himself against the shadows, but I feared I would be long dead before he ever could. The power inside of me, my soul, the machine would destroy it, would pull the eternal essence completely from my being and leave my body as a hollow shell. And 𝐿𝐤𝐳 would use that power as soon as he could. I would not survive the night. I had convinced myself a handful of times before that I would die, and yet I always woke up in the end. The notion Sultan hadn't settled me as much as it was now. I knew there would be no waking up after this. Eric was not here, and I did not want him to be. I valued his life far too much to wish him to endanger it just to try and save me. That sharp, unpleasant sting building in my eyes caused my jaw to clench shut. If 𝐿𝐤𝐻's plan succeeded, I would never get to see North again. It was pathetic that out of everything that was happening, that knowledge was what made me want to cry. Thunder roared overhead, and the howling wind began to send sharp stabs of rain against my skin. Lightning struck the entrance of clearing, and I jumped at its close proximity. Oh my gods, it's nearly time. 𝐿𝐤𝐳 shouted excitedly from the base of the steps, those eyes flashing between yellow and red in joy. The shadows swirling around us seemed to howl in excitement. I pulled harder at the straps, the power growing in my chest as my breathing clogged my throat. Loud, bone-shaking roars seemed to cry around the entirety of the mountain, though I couldn't tell if it was from the massive storm, or the creatures waiting below. Thunder rolled across the sky once again, and the lightning that struck the clearing that time was far closer than before. Yes, 𝐿𝐤𝐳 screamed ecstatically as the surroundings lit up with the intensity of the lightning bolt. No, I no longer wondered what the machine's purpose was anymore, what it was supposed to do. It was drawing the lightning to me. Dear gods, 𝐿𝐤𝐳. I screamed against the thunderous noise of the storm and raging demons below, but my voice only got lost in the wind. The gold power was spreading more quickly now, its light shining from the base of my fingertips. before quickly disappeared into the metal beneath my touch. It took the power right from my grasp, stole it. 𝐿𝐷𝐿. I tried again, though I doubted I was doing any good besides screaming myself hoarse. Yes. Call him, little star. Draw him in. The serpent's voice was mocking, but excited as thunder rolled again. I wanted to clutch desperately at the stone, to hold on to its warmth and pray until its true owner appeared. But the feel of it against my chest was hard and held very little warmth. Lightning struck again, this time just a fraction away from the machine. Its impact shook straight through me and made my insides churn. I panicked and started tugging so hard against the straps that it tore bloody strips into my arms. My hard breathing turned into hyperventilating pants as more of the gold power started to flee from my arms. It was going to hit me. The lightning was going to fry me from the inside out. I watched with wide, terrified eyes as slivers of my soul got sucked into the machine. Very little escaping and slipping around my fingers. The hyperventilating grew worse. I had to get out of here. You should be careful with that. An amused chuckle reached my ears as I let roll brightly around my fingers. I jumped and snapped my fingers into a tight fist in surprise as I turned to the unexpected voice. Careful, W, with what? I stammered at the eternally beautiful god standing casually in front of me. His arms crossed over his chest as he raised one dark, amused eyebrow. That power of yours. It can do some real damage if you truly want it. I don't want that. I practically squeaked as the light I was trying to squelch began to burn my palm. The god chuckled again, his bright eyes flashing in amusement as he took a step towards me. Of course you don't. His voice had grown soft, his eyes warm as he stopped before me and reached for my hand. I stumbled away from him, away from that inviting warmth his grasp offered. His lips quirked up at the corner. I just want to help. He eased softly and reached for my fisted hand again. I slowly held it up between us, my eyes hesitant as I gazed up at him in a daze. It was true what the others had said before. They were all unearthly beautiful. See, he murmured as his strong hand slowly eased my noggin, the light disappearing as he traced the lines in my palm. I sighed in relief as the heat died with it. Just takes a little practice. He smiled brightly down at me, the corners of his eyes crinkling at the action. The light from the newfound power inside of me had faded, and yet his strong fingers continued to slowly trace my skin. A whole new heat swelled to my cheeks. I am Immerse. I heard myself murmur softly as my eyes got lost in his entrapping gaze. His smile did not fall, but it seemed to turn rather sneaky as he brought my palm to his lips. I know, he murmured before pressing a soft kiss to the tender skin of my palm. I am 𝐿𝐷𝐿. My heart seemed to pound in my ears. The god of the moon, I murmured with wide, astounded, and slightly frightened eyes. That smile of his turned into a small smirk as he lowered my hand once again, blue eyes piercing into my very soul. Yes, you could say that.